Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Melissa Munier, and as we wait for the participants to join in, I'm going to cover a few housekeeping items that my teammate Kathleen will also post in the chat portion, which is located at the bottom of your screen. First, all participants are muted. The conversation is being recorded and will be available on the Engage to Excel website and via email to everyone who registered for the session. We do encourage questions, and you can enter those directly into the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. And if for some reason we don't get to all of the questions today, if you didn't post anonymously, we'll respond back to you via email. So I'm just going to pause for a minute and give us a second for the room to fill up. I'll give it about 30 more seconds. All right, so it looks like we've got a good group here. I'm going to start with some introductions. First off, again, I'm Melissa Munier, and I lead the marketing team here at Engage to Excel Group. And I'll be the moderator, along with Kathleen Erdy, who will be managing the event in the background. And then joining us today are our two guests and Engage to Excel team members, Dr. Jack Wiley and Jeff Gelinas. Welcome. So, in addition to being our Chief Scientific Officer, Jack is an award-winning organizational psychologist recognized internationally for groundbreaking research that links employee survey results to measures of business performance. Jack was also awarded SIOPS, or the Society for Industrial and Organizational Psychology's most prestigious professional practice award. Congrats on that. And in his spare time, which he has none of, he's an author with a few books under his belt, including his most recent, The Employee-Centric Manager, which has turned into a manager training program for organizations and something we offer here at Engage to Excel. And then Jeff leads the strategic direction as president of employee and consumer engagement and incentives at EDE Group. Jeff is a collaborative leader who is dedicated to driving company growth by delivering innovative engagement solutions that keep our clients and their employees and consumers engaged. Jack, Jeff, thank you for joining us and to talk more about employee engagement.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
We're excited. It's a popular topic. So before I turn the conversation over to the both of you, I'm going to kick off this conversation with a poll. So people will see a poll pop up on their screen. So please take a moment to answer. I'm going to do that now. And the question is, what do you think is the biggest driver of employee engagement in your organization? And you have several options: employee recognition, exciting work, job security, fair pay, education and career growth, workplace conditions, both physical and social, and then frank, honest, and transparent leaders. So I'll give that about 45 seconds or so to go. All right, about 10 more seconds. Get those answers in. All right, I'm going to end the poll, and Jack, Jeff, I'm going to share the results on the screen.
All right, very interesting. So Jack, frank, honest, and transparent leaders looks like it came out as number 1, 31%. Employee recognition, number 2 at 25%. And it looks like workplace conditions, physical and social, number 3. What are your thoughts on that, Jack? That's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. I think maybe the emphasis on the transparent, frank, and honest leaders has to do with some of the current uncertainty in the general economic environment right now, with the imposition of tariffs and how that affects different industries and what that might mean in terms of a strategic response on the part of the company's leadership, and the extent to which they've communicated that and given employees an understanding of how they're going to respond. I'm not at all surprised by employee recognition. This is near and dear to the hearts of employees. It's what keeps employees motivated, and under different circumstances might have emerged as the number one driver of employee engagement. So I think this is set and true to the current circumstances we're dealing with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good context as we kick off our session today.
Great.
Cool.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to the both of you, and we'll pop back in occasionally.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Melissa.
Thank you.
All right. So Jack, wanted to kick off the conversation. I know that in late 2024, you, in conjunction with Engage to Excel, did some research around the state of employee engagement. I know there are some really interesting findings. So tell us a little bit about that research.
Right. It might be a good, Jeff, as a starting point to actually define employee engagement. At its heart, it is truly a motivational construct. The basic idea is that an engaged employee is one who's willing to apply discretionary effort to the completion of tasks that are important to the goals and vision of the organization. So it really is motivational in its meaning. I also think that it's important to understand how we measure engagement. We consider engagement to be an outcome variable, as we've known for the last several years, and which would be typical in the HR conversation space. Employee experience is the means to employee engagement. So what an employee experiences at work is going to determine their overall level of employee engagement. But when we think of engagement, we define our employee engagement index as having 5 components. They have to do with overall satisfaction, pride, advocacy. In other words, would I be willing to recommend this company as a great place to work to my family and friends? It also has to do with commitment. Do I plan to stay with this organization for a long period of time? And then finally, discretionary effort. So we're looking at employee experience as a means to employee engagement, with employee engagement being the outcome variable. The other thing that I would say is that over time, we started out demonstrating that employee engagement is related to business performance. But the more recent scientific research has actually shown that employee engagement causes business performance. And so a more engaged workforce is going to be associated with a company that's performing better at the company level. In that sense, we might even talk about it as workforce engagement as opposed to individual employee engagement. The other thing that I would say is that we've been measuring, as you indicated, employee engagement very carefully for the last 10 years with the special survey that we conduct through the auspices of Engage to Excel. One of the things that we noted was that employee engagement over the last 10 years was at its highest in 2018. And as we remember, 2018 was a period of economic growth. Companies were expanding. That created more opportunities for employees to progress in their career as they were moving up the chain and given more responsibilities, and led to higher levels of engagement. Then we had a dramatic drop in employee engagement just 2 years ago in 2022. If you advance to the actual period of time when we were in the midst of the pandemic circumstances. But what happened in very late 24, the last quarter of 24, when we measured again just a few months ago, we found that employee engagement rocketed back up by 5 percentage points. Now, at an individual and company level, we might think of 5 percentage points as a significant improvement. But when you think about that at a national level, it really is a substantial improvement in the level of employee engagement across the U.S. As a national workforce.
No, that's really helpful, and thanks for kicking us off with a definition. I always think it's helpful to level set when it comes to what are we really talking about when we think about the construct of employee engagement. So interesting that it reached again those 2018 levels in late 2024. What do you think are some factors contributing to that?
Well, again, I think we have to look externally as well as internally. Externally, in the macro environment, we're in a period of time where the economy has been performing relatively well. That's not always what we get in the news reports, but it actually has been performing relatively well. And so what that's going to provide would be, again, more opportunity for people to grow within their careers, take on additional responsibilities as companies produce those higher levels of profitability and need more talent to drive the organization. So I think the external conditions of overall economic conditions, the hiring environment, the opportunities for people to progress are all quite relevant. But when we look internally to organizations, we also see that there are factors that are really quite important to the achievement of employee engagement. And those factors have to do with some of those that were listed in this poll. So, for example, recognition, performance management, honest two-way communication with leaders, the opportunity to learn new skills and advance in their careers, satisfaction with work-life balance. These are internal factors that we know not only in 2024, but historically have been important lever points, drivers, if you will, for employee engagement. And so employees are responding quite well to measures along these particular variables.
Yeah, that's interesting. And what do you think, if you think about that reported increase in employee engagement, again, reaching that 68% level, how does this compare to other industry reports? And if there are discrepancies when we look at other industry reports reporting on employee engagement, what might some of those be?
Yeah, I think that some of the other high visibility polls are actually more pessimistic about employee engagement. And that's always been of a concern to me. I frankly, I haven't quite believed those polls, to be honest. I've been measuring overall satisfaction, organizational climate, employee engagement for about 4 decades. And I feel some of those polls are just too diminishing of the current level of willingness to apply discretionary effort that exists within the national workforce. And I think there are reasons for that. The methodology is the primary reason. When we present employees with questions within a survey, we use a 5-point scale. They can either strongly agree, neither agree nor disagree, or strongly disagree. And I think what happens is that some organizations use only what we would call the top box. Do I strongly agree with a positively worded statement? We don't take that approach. We believe that both agreement and strong agreement would be the indicator of the current level of engagement. I think another difference is that some organizations think about employee engagement as actually the drivers of employee engagement. And so they have a set number of drivers of employee engagement, what we would call the employee experience, and they actually measure those, average the results of those to determine what the level of employee engagement is. As I said before, we don't do that. We measure the outcome of employee engagement. What drives that person to have a level of high motivation and engagement. And I think the third difference with some of these high visibility polls is they operate with the belief system that engagement is largely, almost entirely, the result of the interaction between the subordinate and the manager. And frankly, we don't believe that's true. I've never believed that to be true. There are other agents that come into play to determine whether an employee and the workforce in general is going to be engaged. So I think those are some of the reasons why you would see a difference. In fact, I was looking at the level of unfavorability, the extent to which people responded unfavorably. That is, either they disagreed or strongly disagreed with the drivers and with the overall outcome measures of employee engagement. And generally, even if you added together disagreement and strong disagreement, you're still only at about 12 to 15% of the workforce. So to me, that would be the people who are strongly disengaged. When we look only at the very bottom box of strong disagreement, frankly, it typically doesn't rise above 5%. So for those reasons, I don't always draw the same conclusions. I think we don't always draw the same conclusions about the actual level of engagement that exists within the U.S. workforce.
No, that's very interesting. And you're right around the different agents. Yes, that manager-employee relationship is important, but you also have interactions with senior leadership, your peers, you have organizational policies, you have a lot of things that do affect that discretionary effort. Very interesting. So you did mention drivers of employee engagement, and I am curious, just based on this most recent research, which ones are most important in influencing engagement levels across different industries? And I think we've got a lot of different industries represented on this call today. So I think, some commentary from you on the drivers, I think would be helpful for this audience.
Yeah, the way I would answer that question, Jeff, is that we first look at what are the drivers at the national level, at the entire U.S. workforce. And the drivers that emerged as most influential this year had to do with recognition, whether or not people felt there was a promising future for them at the company, and that's going to be a result of investment and of time and energy around their training and development, and also their understanding of and level of confidence with regard to how the organization is performing. It would have to do with the corporate policy of work-life balance. It would also have to do with the extent to which they are on a team that works well together. The team experience is positive, and there's cooperation among coworkers. And then finally, it's kind of the basic question of, can I achieve my career goals at this organization? Which again taps in obviously to career development. So an organization that wants to manage in a generic sense toward a higher level of engagement would want to put an emphasis on making sure that they're doing well against all of those measures. And I think the important thing emerging from this is that it's not just one agent that is influencing employee engagement. From our list, we would conclude that there are various agents, including the direct manager, senior manager, corporate policies, the team experience. So all of these things come into play and should be within the bandwidth of what organizations are tracking and being concerned about. Now, as to the industry issue, the surprising thing here is that there's very little differentiation between industries. There might be, 80 to 85%, if you will, commonality across industries. And it really, and I've studied this for, as I said before, several decades. It's perhaps surprising, but it's consistent. It's a reliable result that the drivers are going to remain the same. What's different is that some industries score much higher on these drivers and overall engagement than others. So not to pick on any one particular industry, but high tech, for example, typically has the highest levels of favorability, perhaps followed by pharmaceutical companies or companies in the medical industry. And then at the other end, we often see, frankly, governmental employees, regardless of what level, if that's local, state, or national. And so the drivers largely remain the same, but the driver's level of favorability is what differs between the industries.
Gotcha. Okay. Before I want to touch on that just a little bit more, because I think some of those drivers will lead us to some really good practical strategies that we can think about. But we do have a question in the chat. Karen Gifford, thank you for asking the question. How are you defining discretionary efforts? So I think you mentioned it earlier, Jack, with our construct around employee engagement. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more around what constitutes discretionary effort?
Right. So it's basically, does my organization motivate me? Does it motivate my fellow coworkers to apply discretionary effort? It's sort of a summary question about all of the experiences you have with the organization, the way they show up to employees, the way they treat employees, the way they interact with employees, the quality of the employee experience. Does that bring out the motivation to apply discretionary effort?
Okay, great. So getting back to some of those practical strategies, Jack. So we've kind of understood some of the drivers, of engagement. What are some strategies that companies can implement to boost and certainly sustain these engagement levels and ensure that they remain high?
Right. One of the things I want to add to our drivers list before we move on is that and a lot of times this gets overlooked, but it's so critically important, and that is job person fit. Is the person fitted into a job that creates a sense of excitement for them with regard to the kind of work they're doing? Do they feel a sense of personal accomplishment at the end of the day? Is a job a good fit for them, and does it bring out their best? So I don't want to overlook that as a driver. That's an important driver. Now, moving away from that into your question, Jeff, I think that there are a number of things that organizations can do. First of all, they need to measure the current level of employee engagement. So where are they? Where do they stand? And then in an ideal world, they would do the analysis, a statistical analysis, to find out within their own organization what are the key drivers, exact levers of employee engagement. My advice would be that they decide to act on only a few of those levers, because we do have a limited amount of resources, and if we fractionate those across too many action items, we tend to bog down. So they should identify a few of those drivers, perhaps those that are I think in the best sense, most related to their strategic vision for how they're going to be successful, and go to work on those drivers. Find out why people feel the way they do, develop responsive action plans, implement those action plans. And then very importantly, they need to communicate to the workforce that, partly or entirely as a result of what you have told us through the voice of the employee is important. We have taken these actions to address these improvements which we're trying to bring about. And that really is a critical point of connecting the dots, closing the loop, however you want to characterize that. That's very, very important. And then the organization should be monitoring the quality of action plans, identifying those that are the best, that are creating the most improvement, and then share those action plans more broadly as quote unquote best practices that can be used across the organization. That presumes that they're going to continue to measure employee engagement over the course of time. Typically, every year is what employees most desire in terms of participating in that kind of listening or employee voice experience. and tracking their improvement.
That's great. Jack, we've got another question here in the Q&A, and I think what we'll do is we'll answer that. Then we're going to do another poll and probably just have time for just a bit more commentary. But the question is from Nigra Tutunzik. I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. Other than seeing that there are vacancies for people to get promoted into, what are other factors or proof points that show employees that there is room to grow and develop their careers in their company? And I'd be interested in your thoughts, Jack. But as I always say, career development, I think, really lies between the individual, the manager, and the employer at large. They all have a shared responsibility. And I think that at times, folks can think about, career development in the sense of being promoted, but there's so many more factors and opportunities than a promotion. It could be learning a new skill. It could be attending a course and getting a certificate. It could be shadowing others. It could be more of a lateral expansion of responsibilities and duties. I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at career development, but certainly there's a shared responsibility between the individual, the manager, and the organization at large. I'd love for maybe any additional commentary from you on that.
Well, first of all, I agree 100%. I think that when you enter into an organizational setting, you want to understand their employee value proposition. Is it one that indicates that they have an emphasis on career development and growth, especially for high-performing people who are making significant contributions? Then you want to be working with a manager who rewards your performance contributions through training and development opportunities. And then finally, if the organization is being successful, growing and developing, that naturally creates more opportunities. So people want to be on a winning team, and they want to, not everyone, but most employees want to advance on that winning team. So I think all of these things are directly relevant to that question.
Yeah, that's great. Just being mindful of time, I think we're going to go to another poll question. And then if there are some questions that we're unable to answer, we can certainly reach out individually and get to those, because I do see that there are a few more. But we do have a polling question here. Have you noticed any changes in employee engagement within the last 6 months in your company?
Great question.
Yeah. So we'll wait for responses to come in, and then Melissa or Kathleen, when we feel like we're at a significant number here, we'll close the poll.
Sure, we'll just give it another 20 seconds or so.
Yeah.
All right, 10 more seconds. I'm going to close it out. All right, let's see, let's launch the results.
All right, so it looks like the majority are saying that engagement has slightly decreased, followed by staying the same. So 41% saying it's slightly decreased, 32% saying it's largely stayed the same, and then third would be engagement has slightly increased at 19%. Interesting. I think that's good kind of context as we head into our last question that we can discuss here today, Jack, which is, as we look forward and into the future, what do you think employee engagement will look like? You've been studying it for decades, right? And as you indicated, you do see subtle shifts in engagement, but even just a 5-point difference is pretty substantial over, even a couple year period. So certainly there will be fads or things that enter in. And again, that was kind of interesting to see what people have thought about over the last 6 months since we did that research. But any thoughts on, kind of what the future looks like, Jack?
Well, yes, indeed. First of all, just to address the survey results, it could very well be that the people who are motivated to sign up for this webinar are ones who are concerned about the level of employee engagement because they've noticed some drop off in the workforce engagement for their particular organization, and that's obviously quite understandable. Now, when we think about the future, well, I think that, at a big picture level, the pendulum with regard to remote work is swinging back a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Remote work was a big thing with a lot of permission to do that during the pandemic, not for all, but for many organizations. Now some organizations are really tightening up on their policy, demanding people come back to work. I think for a lot of people who are white collar or knowledge workers, we're going to end up with that hybrid work model. But we have to remember, actually, the majority of the national workforce doesn't even have a chance to work remotely. If you're in retail or on the floor in retail, that is, if you're in a customer service restaurant situation, if you are working in a factory or a steel mill, there's no chance for you to work remotely unless perhaps you're a white collar worker. So everything has to be contextualized. If I were to sum up what I've seen in terms of employee engagement over the last 20 to 30 years, the drivers historically and repeatedly have to do with, do I feel recognized for the contribution I make? Do I see an opportunity to grow and to develop? Have people told me that I'm an important member of the team? Do I believe that I'm in an organization that is successful and that I can be proud of? And then also, do I like the work I do? Is it a good job person fit? And then finally, are the policies of the company supportive of employees? Do the policies themselves assume that we're here to do a good job? And when that's true, people feel treated as if they're being treated with dignity and respect. And I think that's extremely important as well in terms of maintaining that employee relationship so that talented employees don't jump away to go someplace else.
Yeah, that's great. Great practical advice as you think about that long period of research that you've done. Thank you so much, Dr. Jack. Thank you to Melissa and Kathleen as well for organizing this great session. I know 30 minutes goes by very quickly. There were some questions we weren't able to get to, but we can certainly reach out and follow up on. So Melissa, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, we just want to say thank you both for your time today. I think this is a very enlightening subject and continues to be something that I think people obviously hear in the chat. It was going, lots of conversations. So we appreciate everybody's engagement. And again, thanks to both of you. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks. Thanks for
Take
the
care.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.